Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast, where aspiring entrepreneurs learn what it takes to find, buy, and build successful franchise businesses. My name is Drew Carpenito, and I'm your host as we dive into these fascinating behind-the-scenes stories of people who have used surprising franchises to create massive success. I'm glad you're here. Let's dig in. Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast. Today, I am joined by CEO and founder of an emerging franchise in the home improvement space called Lime Painting. But we're going to talk about how they're a lot more than painting. Nick Lopez, welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great, Drew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you getting up bright and early your time to join me here. Nick's in Colorado, living the good life. I'm in North Carolina, living that life, but always a little jealous of Nick. But no, Nick, welcome, my friend. I'd love to just kick it off by, sharing your story and kind of how you got to the point where you are now, and maybe talking a little bit about where Lime is now in the growth. So I'll kick it over to you.
Right on. Well, again, thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, my story starts back in college. So I'm from Denver, as you mentioned, and leaving high school, I wanted to go to school out of state, and Michigan State happened to check all the boxes. There was a wrestler my sophomore year of high school, and he had just won the national title. So my logic as a sophomore in high school was, by the time I get to Michigan State my freshman year, he'd be a senior, and I'd get the opportunity to learn from him and really take over the weight class and run with it from there. And clearly, being an out-of-state student, it's pretty expensive. So, my hope was that a scholarship would pay for school. And so I did just that. I pretty much took out a $500 credit card and maxed it out. You're 18, getting those credit cards, and wish I would have taken that life class. Nonetheless, that's how I got to Michigan State. And sure enough, I'm in Coach Minkle's office and introducing myself. And, before you know it, I'm preferred walk-on, and I ended up roommating with that wrestler and doing just that, learning from a lot of great wrestlers, made some great friendships, and really a special time in my life. I grew up playing 3 sports at a time, so much energy. My parents would put me in as many sports as possible to keep me from tearing the house apart. And now being a dad of 4, I can see that gene there, the high energy. My house is constantly getting torn up. And
how old are your kids?
So 6, 5, 4, and 2. So, but we have some birthdays around the horizon, and we're kind of in that season. Everybody getting a little bit older, but so all young and wild, and showing me what it was like for my parents. And I was pretty much a gym rat. And, I loved the whole cultural piece of being on a team. And I very much enjoyed that at Michigan State. And, but unfortunately, I get to a point where I received a tuition bill, and it's about $2,200. And for me, oh my gosh, that was so much money, being a broke college kid. So, thankfully, I actually met my wife in college. She was she ran the athletic math department at Michigan State. And so I'd go in there every Thursday, and she'd tutor me. And, at the end of the semester, I basically told her I was done wrestling. And so she friend requested me. And, there's something different about it when I accepted that friend request. And, as the story goes on, when I received that tuition bill, she was the one who helped me ultimately pay for it, even against her older sister's advice that you're probably never going to see that $2,200 again. And, I guess she was right. I still haven't paid her back. But,
that's funny.
That's how I got to a point where my freshman year, I started a company called Spartan College Painters. I had seen plenty of college kids running college paint companies, and me having really big college bills, I started my own company. And, I looked at the bigger the house, the bigger the college bills it would help me pay. And little did I know I was stumbling on our niche. So Lime Painting, we focus on high-end properties, really the top third. We're more of a luxury paint company. And, I'd heard from clients so many times, simple things like, thanks for showing up. Thanks for doing a good job. Thanks for answering your phone. And, I'm sitting in a business lecture class learning about competitive advantage, and this light bulb just start going off. On the front end, clients have very little trust. They're saying things like, hey, are you going to run off with my deposit? Are you going to charge me more when you start the job? Are you going to job hop? I'm like, what's job hop? And so, there's all this lack of trust up front, compliments on the back end. And I started looking into national companies that were focused on these consumers that wanted to pay more to get more. I'd really vetted quality solutions. It was my name going on it. These were high-end homes. Common sense to me was that quality was the utmost importance. And I started realizing that that wasn't the case. I get in my marketing degree and I'm learning about positioning. If you have price and quality, that's really your lane. That's where you stay. And, so designing this business model with that in mind. But I start looking into other competitors across the country that are doing this. Clearly, if I'm giving this value in East Lansing, and there's 18, 19, 20 winning these bids against national companies and so-called local high-end paint companies, after doing some due diligence, it was clear there was a real opportunity nationally to give this value to clients outside the market. And there weren't any high-end paint companies. So I talked to a mentor. He gave me a book called E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And that was about 12 years ago, about halfway through college. And that's when I was introduced to franchising, learned about this idea of working on the business, not in it, creating systems and process roles so you can scale and duplicate that consistent service. So I spent the rest of my time in college really doing that, applying my business sales degree to create a model that would do what Gerber talked about. And I moved home to Denver in 2013 and I started line painting. Next year, 2023, we're going into our 10th year, 10-year anniversary, which is pretty exciting. Yeah, I started a company, and for me, it was really taking a bike from one parking lot and moving it to another, from East Lansing to Denver. And I'd heard things like, how's is it even going to work in a different market, stuff like that. But I, grew the company to a couple $1 million business. Those first 4 years were really about proving out the unit economics and really doubling down on the business model, making it more differentiated and improving the margins just by eliminating quirks in the business that, systems can solve. And, I joined the IFA in 2016 and traveled around the circuit and got my CFE for a couple years, over the course of a couple years, 16, 17. And then 2018, we onboarded our first franchise owner. 2019, we onboarded our next few. And in August of 2020, we had 7 locations. And today, as of November, we have 80, or November of 2022, we have 80 locations. And that's really been the byproduct of a lot of advisors, a lot of great strategic partners, and a lot of folks much smarter than me that understand franchising. One thing I appreciated about my business and sales degree was that I knew those things contributed to the success that we had. And I wanted to lean on folks that were much more experienced in franchising to really show me and teach me the ropes of franchising. That's pretty much the story.
So you actually applied what you were learning in college, huh? To create what Lime is today. That's pretty cool. Like, you were able to take something theoretical in the classroom and tinker around with that application in your business. And that's pretty cool. Not a lot of people get to do that. It's versus just sitting in the classroom and waiting for waiting to start their career and stuff like that. Now, congrats on your growth, man. So 2016, joined the IFA, first franchisee, 2018, 2022, you had 7 locations. Sounds like you grew organically and kind of hit the button on national expansion around then, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
I think like for any like emerging franchise companies listening, right? Like, there's navigating through that path of national expansion, and there's so many advisors, right? There's so many people out there that can give you a quote unquote advice. like, how did you navigate through all the quote unquote advisors that are out there to kind of figure out what was going to be right for you guys and Lime?
I think it starts with relationships, right? That's business really. And every business is made up of different leadership teams. For me, in my case, I was bootstrapping, I was founder. So for me, it was what made sense for me, what was seemed like a good fit for me, who had values and vision and strategy that lined up with my vision for Lime. And then it just turned into, trial and error of relationships and seeing where it clicked on both ends. And I went through partnerships with many different consultants and advisors, and it'd run its course. I would download and implement as much as they could help me with, and we come to a dead end or a crossroad. And at that dead end or crossroad, it was like, okay, what's next? Who's the next advisor or consultant or partner that is going to take us to where we need to go to our next dead end or crossroad? So for me, it's been just building relationships and a lot of goodwill and friendships that have taken us on our journey. And there's been a lot of different turns and dead ends, and it's just been a matter of, okay, what's next? And I think that's so much of business ownership. I think failure is always that dead end, is what could be at the end, and that's the dead end. But really, I look at it as what's next, as opposed to there's failure, there's always an answer, always a solution. So it's a matter of really just finding it and going down that path of what's next.
Yeah. And you have an amazingly humbly ambitious mindset. I think, like, you're not afraid to ask, for somebody's opinion or something like that. It sounds like, as you kind of went through your journey to take Lime national, which, and there's a lot of people that'll help you, right? If you ask for help, right, they'll give you their opinion, whether it's the right thing for your business or not. Like, that's one thing. But I think, you brought up an interesting point about, this idea of failure, right? Like, has such a negative connotation, right? Like, oh my God, I failed at this, and my life is over and I'm never going to recover, right? But like, failure is a good thing in business, right? As long as you have the right mindset in terms of looking at it, in terms of, okay, hey, now we know what doesn't work, so we don't have to spend any more time and resources going down that path. So let's close that door, and let's continue to find what door is going to be the right thing for us. So in a way, like, I think, like, a good way to think about failure, like you said, is like, it's an investment in now what not to focus on, which there's a lot of value in. And there's only one way to find out, right, what doesn't work. And sometimes you just got to do it. So I'd love to know, like, when was it Facebook where you met your wife? Was it a friend request through Facebook? Because back in my day, it was AOL Instant Messenger. That was the that was the means of communicating with other folks. But was it Facebook kind of thing, or?
Yeah, it was Facebook. Yeah, it wasn't MySpace or anything like that. It was a Facebook friend request.
I love it, man. That is so cool. But you guys have gotten to know each other pretty well through the tutoring and whatnot, and that's pretty cool. So, okay, so you're building this national company. You kind of figured out this niche, like this high-end painting niche. But it's not just painting that you guys do, right? Like you figured out that there was this opportunity to offer additional services to the homeowners, right? Mm-hmm. And what kind of stuff was that?
Yeah, so those first 4 years in Denver, really proving out the business model and doubling down on differentiating the business. It was clear that we weren't differentiated enough, meaning that there was still more opportunity to bring clients more value. And yeah, I'm doing right by clients, at least I thought. And so I would paint a house, and we'd paint over the gutters that were leaking onto the substrates that caused them to need to be painted in the first place. And so it's just things like that where I felt like we were missing opportunities to really do more for the client. And as I got more experienced in the space, it was clear that paint was just one of many different types of coatings, right? And a coating, you could think of it like a glove, right? If you have your hand out in the elements and there's not a glove on, if it's hot or cold, your skin's directly affected by the elements. On the flip side, you can put lotion on your hands. It soaks into your pores, kind of conditions it. That's like stain, right? So you have these stains and these coatings, more like paints, and these surfaces on a home are porous, much like the skin on your hands, and they are exposed to the elements. And so on high-end homes, custom properties like the properties we work on, there's a ton of different surfaces. And guess what? The sun and water deteriorate them, and they're expensive. So you look at the stucco siding on a house, or the metal railings, or security doors and accent pieces. There's usually these 24-inch metal lights. And there's it could be up to 20 or so of them around the property, and so on and so forth. There's so many surfaces that make up a custom home. And if we're just doing the painting, well, the paint looks great, but all the other surfaces are faded, chalked, cracking, crumbling, deteriorating, and they're high value items. So you take the same approach as you do paint. You prep it and you apply it. It's that straightforward. And so our applicators, being that we're working with clients that want to pay more to get more, we're truly able to recruit artisans, very talented individuals, talented craftsmen that traditionally, for the most part, are painters. But if they switch the product in their equipment from paint to a coating for stucco, it's applied the exact same way. It's just a different product. Maybe there's some tweaks on the prep, but you apply that over and over throughout the surfaces on a custom property. Now, all of a sudden, you're bringing a lot of value to that client, and you're very differentiated in the market, in that, that client goes to do due diligence, as they rightfully do, and most of the time do. And they realize that, oh my gosh, I called a painter and he told me, hey, you got to call the stucco guy. Hey, you got to call the stamped concrete guy. We don't acid stain and seal that. You got to call the metal company. We don't do powder coating. The gutters, you got to call a gutter company. We don't do gutter installs, and so on, so forth. And so this client is really left with this unique set of recommendations. And now they can't undo what they learned. They know that their house is not just old, rather it's deteriorating, and they know how to solve it. And at Lion, we've provided those solutions, and they have a turnkey, one point of contact on the account manager side, and then a quality control role. Our creator that's really working with our subcontractors, ensuring that the scope of work's being done the right way. And so now that client has a turnkey solution for their entire property. And it's done in a reasonable amount of time, but it's done with the highest grade products and extensive scopes of work. Again, they want the job done right. They care about quality, and they're absolutely wanting to pay more to get more. And so that's really our niche. Those are the ways that we bring a lot of value to clients.
It's an emotionally cool thing to watch a customer, I would imagine, like look at the finished product of transforming their house, right? And they don't know, right? Like they just want their house to look beautiful, right? They don't know all the nooks and crannies and where their house is deteriorating, which surface is, messed up, because they're not, poking around those areas of their home. But you nailed it, man. Like being a kind of a one-stop shop to help a customer go from where they kind of in their head, they know they want the house to look like, even if they just start with, like, I would imagine, just like changing the color of their house or whatever, the room. But then there's all this other stuff that goes into going into that transformation. It's really cool how you've been able to tap into that and figure out a way to be that one-stop shop through the subcontractors. And because the whole subcontractor model too, right? Like there's a whole world of contractors that are amazingly talented at what they do, but they just want to paint. Like they just want to go there, paint, get paid consistently. They don't want to have to deal with all the front end customer service stuff and project scoping and stuff like that, right? Like that's the beauty of your business model, is that it's kind of a variable labor force too, right? By being able to partner with these subcontractors.
Yeah, much like we bring a lot of value and differentiation to homeowners, we bring that same value and differentiation, different set, to subcontractors. Absolutely. But all along the lines of what you talked about, right? Providing that turnkey option for them to get consistent work that pays well. And, we pay timely, we pay them more, we give them jobs pretty much every week as much as we can. Clearly, they're independent contractors, but it really creates synergy for them. and they're not having to worry about their employees sitting at home for a week or two, and therefore there's pressure on them to get a job, and so they're cutting prices and getting into opportunities where they're not making great money, and they kind of play that game, and so next thing you know, a client that they gave a great deal to keep their guys busy, they're leaving that job for a great paying job, and coming back to that other client, and that's quote unquote the job hopping that consumers experience in the market. Yeah, it's multifaceted in a lot of different ways, but yeah, clearly giving subcontractors a ton of value as well.
Yeah, and the model is like you're a good, your creators, the project managers, the estimators. I think you called them creators in your business model. Like they're a buffer, not just between the customer and the subcontractors, but also between the subcontractors and the customers, which I would imagine the subcontractors like as well, right? They know who they have to deal with on a project, and sometimes they don't have to deal with those homeowners that can be a little squirrely sometimes, but
Yeah.
like I said, it's an emotional thing. But no, that's cool. It's genius, man. So where did Lime come from? What's the story behind naming the company Lime Painting?
Well, I was sitting in a neighborhood in college, and I'm like, my gosh, we've done so much work over the years in here, and we didn't really get credit for it. If we had a color that clients could recognize, even if they didn't know our name, they just knew, the purple guys, they come in every year, they transform homes, and that's what the purple guys do. And so a color, I started realizing, would give that brand recognition. And so I went to Michigan State. It's green, and so lime is the most eye-catching color, and so that's essentially what our model is, right? You can see our job sites from space, basically, and that's the whole point. So the referrals, the compounding that happens around job sites, there's no better sales tool than a job site, and so really it's marketing focus. But since then, lime's become our values, stands for love, integrity, mission, and excellence.
I love it. So you kind of came up with, kind of filled the marketing gap in your business originally, and now you've transformed it into being the values, and I would imagine helping to shape the culture that you are cultivating within Lime around the country. So can you talk a little bit about the culture and kind of what your opinion on culture is, and what you do to pay attention to it as you grow?
Sure. I mean, business is all about people, right? Businesses are made up of people. They serve people, and it's all relationships. And so, whether you know it or not, your business has a culture, and so values do such a tremendous job of directing and reinforcing, being a vetting tool for the type of people that come into the company. And if they're much more than just words in a business plan, or words on a coffee cup, if leadership and the leaders within the company do a great job of living out and setting the example of those values, they come alive, they come to life, and it really creates an infectious culture, because the folks that are joining your organization are joining it for your values, and it just reinforces itself and gains a lot of momentum. And so for us, we're very much a family-like culture. We love to collaborate, communicate, and we're very much servant focused, right? We're in the customer service business. So, we're dealing with people all day long, and, really having that selfless servant style of doing business with one another and our customers, it even more so sets us apart, as it further differentiates us. That's exactly what our clients are looking for. That's exactly what our subcontractors are looking for. And it's so hard to find in our space. And yet, by us being intentional about our values, it's just another point of differentiation. But for everyone that aligns with the values, it's just good quality of life.
I love it. What do they say? Culture beats strategy, or culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Something like that.
All day.
So like, as you've grown, right? Like you're getting more and more people into your organization as you expand nationally. Like, what are some of the things that you do to make sure that the culture remains the culture that you want it to be? do you guys do anything like, ongoing to kind of help reinforce those values in the culture as you grow?
I think it's really about being intentional about communicating those values. And it's really become, as we do a lot of national recruiting, like right now, Q4, we're ramping our teams across the country. We're a sales organization. So we're really building up our ratio of salespeople to locations and, preparing for Q1, a new season, trying to train them all. And over the years, we've just seen more and more that folks that are interviewing with us are talking about the values before we're even talking about the values. And so that's the infectious piece. I think you hit this point of momentum where, it just becomes the obvious. And, I guess we're really intentional about putting the values up front and center. And folks that aren't interested don't apply. And folks that are looking at us in the discovery process for a franchise, they won't move forward. And so eventually you just have so many folks that are totally committed to the values that you can't deny it, right? And when you have a lot of points of collaboration within the company, although it's a national company, we're really intentional about webinars and workshops and our owners getting together, mentoring each other. Our franchise advisory council really heads up a lot of the mentoring. But that's all conveyed and that tone is set from the very beginning. So they come into Lime looking forward to that. And, our franchise owners, our current sales folks, whoever's new talking to those sales folks and franchise owners, really validating things. They're getting that affirmation that, yeah, that's the Lime life. And so folks come on board and get to live those things out. So I think it just starts to really reinforce itself and, take on a life of itself. I said a long time ago, it's beyond me. It's the owners, the leaders of the locations that, are really contributing to the direction of Lime. And, whether that's strategically or new initiatives, for us, it's key to get that input from the people at Lime as opposed to just top down. Hey, we're making all the decisions. We're kind of rolling these things out and it is what it is. That collaborative piece is communicated so much up front that, that's what people look forward to. And then, like I said, they live it out and just reinforces itself.
I love it. So you're like just straight up, unapologetic. These are our values in your face. If you don't align with these, then we're probably not a good fit for you, Mr. Franchisee or Mr. Project Manager, or Mrs. Project Manager, Mrs. Franchisee, whatever it may be, right? Like we are a culture value-based company, and it's part of your secret sauce, I would imagine, right? Like being able to bring like-minded people that can align with the culture and the values that you're building. Like it's one of these things, like you can't measure it, right? Like you read about it in books, but like making it happen and creating this living, breathing ecosystem of your values it can be a very, very special thing.
Yeah. And like you said, culture kicks strategies butt all day, but when you have culture and strategy, I think that's really a special combination. And, we're constantly in that pursuit, right? We're constantly hitting that dead end and crossroad for how to do those two things. Bring strategy and culture together. And, it's not perfect, but, that's a part of the beauty is the humility in saying it's not perfect, but together we're going to work for it to be perfect. And guess what? It's never going to be perfect. And the market's always going to be changing and we're always going to be adapting. But those levers, if you will, of collaborating, is really the heart of it all. And it takes extreme humility from leadership, humility from the folks that make up Lime, because humility eliminates personal agendas and ego that really throws a wrench in collaboration. What makes culture so special?
No doubt. Like in being very intentional about humility and being humble and listening and, being able to listen to somebody's opinion, whether or not you agree with it or not, there's, people have a right to an opinion. And, just being able to listen to it and let people express their opinion can go a long way in reinforcing the culture that you're looking to build. I saw it at Abanically, and we did a very similar thing back in the day. It was, the disaster restoration is not the sexiest business in the world, but we had a culture, and we were anal about our culture, and we were very candid, very upfront, very like, look, this is who we are. This is how we're rolling. You either kind of get it or you don't. And if you don't, we'll tell you, that kind of thing. And it creates this family-like feel. Like people want to be a part. The people that you want to have in your organization want to become a part of this. It's special. It's really kind of hard to describe. So it's you're bringing me back many years ago. But you're also you're very intentional about what you're doing. And it's not just, you can't just say you want to have culture. You can't just say these values. You have to live it. You have to breathe it. You have to manage it. And make it a point of the company. So we've talked about all these values. We talked about this amazing culture you're building. What are your values?
Love, integrity, mission, and excellence. I think most of those are pretty straightforward, right? I'll clarify the M, the mission. So we have a public charity. It's a nonprofit. It's called Limelight Outreach. And that's really our outreach. Our M, our mission is our outreach, using our business as a way to give back and do good in the communities that, we're building within. So, having that outward focus, but clearly that's a way of doing business. And so Limelight Outreach is a turnkey way for any owner to, build a halo effect in their market, right? And so we could easily give to the Boys and Girls Club or, any tremendous nonprofit directly. But for us, what we thought would be important would be to have, being a branding focused organization, having, a brand in every market, that Limelight Outreach, like I said, creating that halo effect. And so, we're easily able to raise campaign funds and then use those to partner with established nonprofits. We like to focus on local nonprofits, but Limelight is focused on the youth. So we have 4 pillars of knowledge, and we want to empower the youth through knowledge. Our 4 pillars are faith, family, patriotism, and prosperity. So, we design any campaign that really fits those 4 pillars of knowledge. And prosperity, it could be some business classes, some entrepreneurial classes for the youth. So it's very flexible, very open-ended there. So as long as we're partnering with the youth, somehow designing a campaign and then funding it and giving back just makes it an easy way to support something that we want to move the dial with.
That's cool. It's a great way to get even more involved in the community, and helping to exude the values, and like you said, your mission. That's a big part of your value. So it's your own 501c3 organization that you guys have established that the franchise owners can collaborate with to help raise funds and then direct funds to a youth-based nonprofit in their area that they want to support and help. Is that kind of how it works?
Oh yeah.
That's really cool. Have you seen like some franchise owners grasp onto it a little bit more than others, or are all the franchise owners rallying around the Limelight Outreach?
Just speaking from my own experience, it took me some time to really be able to make big impacts, right? For us, we had 7 locations in August of 2020. Today we're at 80. So a lot of our owners are, their first, second, third year. And so a lot of the focus is, okay, make the business successful, double down on your business, but ultimately from that, be able to give back through Limelight Outreach. So, a lot of our locations that are participating in Limelight, it's pretty easy things like, over the holidays, serving, canned goods or, outerwear, over Christmas, doing gifts. For example, we wrapped and gave presents of just unpainted houses with a paint kit, and we gave them out all throughout the city. And these families went on to social media and posted who and where they gave those painted houses to. So in a season of receiving, the whole objective was to put work into it and then give it. So we had families posting that they were giving it to their local police station, their fire station, things like that. But and then on the other side of the spectrum, doing golf outings and raising funds through the golf outing. We raised about 60 grand for a local nonprofit, and it was tailored towards children and their single moms that receive housing and what's called transformational housing. And so these families are coming from domestic abuse, really unfortunate situations. And so we were able to focus on children of single moms and, do a golf outing, raise that much money. So it's kind of all around the spectrum, just depending on where your business is at. But as your business becomes more and more successful, obviously you can give back in bigger ways. Another good one is, just having trash bags that are, logo, lime green trash bags with the Limelight Outreach logo. And, every client that we're serving, we're receiving different donations, and we're able to team up with a local nonprofit. So, it's not always financially driven. And, if you're just getting going, or, you're more established, there's different variations of how involved you can get.
That's cool, though, that owners have the discretion to work with Limelight Outreach once they get to a point. And that's great advice. Like, hey, new franchise owners, go get profitable first, and then focus on giving back a little bit. But take care of your business first and get that going. And for anybody who is listening and didn't connect the dots around the specific values that Nick mentioned: love, integrity, mission, excellence. If you take the first letters of those words, guess what it spells? Lime. So that's pretty cool. So, so you guys have gone from 7 locations to 80 locations pretty quickly, a couple of years, it sounds like. Yeah, that's pretty rapid growth. Have you, kind of, I had Amy and Jesse Hudson on, and we kind of got on the topic around just personal development and growth, and kind of how having a growth mindset, as a business owner, whether you're a franchise owner, which they are, but yourself as a founder of a national company and CEO of a national company, like, personal growth is something that the best leaders and the most successful business people tend to embrace. So, are there certain things that you are intentional about for you personally as you guys continue to grow and expand and the organization gets bigger and changes? Are there any personal things that you do that just kind of help you cultivate the right mindset and be the leader you need to be for Lime?
Mm-hmm. Well, I always say business is the ultimate personal development course. So it is constantly revealing to you where you need to level up. And for everybody, it's different, and it's all personality driven. If you're a very hands-on go-getter, you're probably going to have to cultivate the skills to slow down and be a little bit more methodical. If you're the opposite, you're much more methodical, you're going to have to get more pep in your step to get your hands and start moving the dial. And so those 2 examples there demonstrate the gaps and the uncertainty and the ambiguity that I think at the core is such an important part of business ownership, being uncomfortable. And you're uncomfortable because you don't have all the answers, or you're putting yourself in a situation where you're not experienced or familiar with. And so, really for me, getting those, getting into those rhythms for operating in that context, right? So I talked about earlier that if at the end of the tunnel is failure, when you're in uncertainty, that's a really, tough position to be in. Because that at the core is business ownership. There's ambiguity, and if at the end of the tunnel is failure, it's not very optimistic. But if you know that there ultimately is a solution, well, in that ambiguity, it's just a matter of waiting it out, right? And so developing those mechanics to really soak in anticipation for what could be in a negative context, but rather, just be patient. And so, patience is such a key thing to develop, at least for me. I think for about 3 years, every year at the top of the year, I have a new word for myself. And that's kind of the theme for the year. I think for like 3-4 years, patience was the word. Could you imagine that? Those are a long few years, let me tell you. But I think really that's the process of, realizing the skill sets and receiving the answers that you need to get to the next phase. So patience, humility, recognizing that business is a personal development course. It's unique for each person, and enjoying the process and really focusing on the process, is everything I just explained that's the journey. And so if it's about the outcome or the end result, it's tough to be on your game if you're not present. And my gosh, if where you're going is potentially failure, then it's a tough mix. But if where you're going is, all right, there's going to be an answer. I may not know it right now, but there will be an answer. I think that's really the world I live in. The gray area, always pushing the boundaries, always breaking the ceiling, and always leveling up. So you can't do those things if you're always operating in the familiar. You'll be in a plateau. So I think high performance personal development is all about hitting the next level.
Yeah. It's kind of a good North Star to have, right? Like even if, you're going down one of the tunnels like you talked about, and it's a quote unquote tunnel that doesn't work out, right? Call it failure, call it whatever, but like there has to be some sort of North Star that's guiding you to, kind of pick yourself up off the floor and hunker back down and say, okay, hey, we're gearing up for another tunnel and we're going to figure this thing out. We don't know what's at the end of this tunnel, but we're going to, have an idea, but we know where we're trying to get to. We know what we want our business to look like. We know what I want our life to look like. We know what I want our family to look like, what our finances to look like. You got to have that I think that North Star that's kind of the guiding light to help you, persevere through the tough days and then be able to celebrate once you've gotten there too, right? Like that's, there's no other, it's the most liberating feeling in the world, like achieving something that you tried and you failed on your own, your money, your sweat, your equity, your blood, your tears. You got beat up a little bit on the way, but then you got to where you wanted to get to. Like, I don't know if there's I can't describe it. It is one of the most liberating feelings in the world though. So I got to ask you, so for 3 years, your word was patience, your word of the year. Why was it patience?
Oh my gosh. You talk about, 5 years of working at Michigan State in Spartan College Painters, is really what I call the laboratory. Learning in the classroom, applying in the field, refining, and then I get to Denver, and there's 4 years of really doubling down on the business model, and then joining the IFA and working on the CFE. It's like you get to this point where the business model is established, it's tight, and you want to just start expanding right now. And you're already, I was already 9 years in, right, and 8 years in, and so joining the IFA and taking 2 years to get a CFE, really learning how to franchise. Like, okay, we're ready to franchise. We could have just done just that, started expanding and growing. But again, I appreciated what I learned in my business degree. I knew that was a direct impact on the business model and the systems that we had. So having to be patient in that period was like, okay, we're ready to franchise. And then once we started franchising in 2018, it was like, no, onboard a single owner, really get familiar with what are the bottlenecks on the business, right? So as you start to go from corporate locations to a franchise owner, there's going to be gaps in the business. And then in 19, just onboard a few more and make sure that what we doubled down on in the first unit is ringing true here, and continuing to rinse out any additional bottlenecks in the business. that was a season of just extreme patience. It's like we're ready to go, but at the same time, really taking the time and being intentional. There's just required a lot of patience. I had personally really mastered the paint business, and that was really on autopilot, and so I'm ready to go. But here we are ready to scale. But the reality was that being strategic about really being patient about it and laying good foundational work was a season of patience.
I love it though. You went crawl, walk, and now you're running. Do you think that you could be running at the speed that you are right now if you didn't go through that couple of years of patience to make the tweaks and learn franchising and get that foundation in place?
Absolutely not. Me personally.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, I think you could make the argument that if you took a franchise company over a 4-year period, maybe 5, whatever, if a franchise company follows the exact same approach that you did, master the business, master the unit model, and then slowly transition into franchising, because it's a different ball game when you're trying to help people replicate the business that you've mastered. Get one, get a couple, keep them local, keep them geographically, within a reasonable distance, get them up and running, then take the next phase of growth, the walk phase, bring onboard a few more. I think you can make the argument that over a 5-year period, you could get to where you wanted to get to faster by following that approach versus just trying to come out of the gates and grow to 80 units in your first year, right? Because that could be a recipe for a little rut row. Maybe we're not ready to help these franchise owners replicate everything because we thought our business model was not ready to be replicated until you kind of break it, a couple times, right? So I respect it, man. I think there's a lot of wisdom for any young emerging franchise company listening, that what you just dropped is the delayed gratification. If you can hunker down for the delayed gratification, you can get to where you want to get to faster over a multi-year period versus trying to come out of the gate swinging and onboarding a bunch of franchise owners. Because at the end of the day, right, like your franchise owner's success and happiness and the values and the culture that you build will kind of at some point become this organism that, just continues to grow without you per se. Right. And that's kind of what you want, right? Like this transcendence almost. So anyways, I'm on a soapbox, but I respect it, man. I respect it. I love to see what you're doing and how you're doing it. And congratulations on the success. So what's next for you and for Lion?
Building the number one paint businesses in every market, going deep in our markets. So, leveling up our marketing, leveling up our tech, leveling up the ops, the systems, the onboarding, the training, really doing everything we can to support and produce franchise partners that are going deep in their market. That's next. So, as a national level, we've gone wide. We're going wide. We're in the process of going wide. And now our focus is really going deep.
I love it, man. I love it. The next phase, the next chapter in growth. Well, good stuff. Well, Nick, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can go to linepainting.com and learn tons. We also have a podcast show called Level Up. You can learn about it on linepainting.com. You can find the Level Up with Nick Lopez show on pretty much any platform. And you can always reach out to me via email. It's nick@linepainting.com.
Good stuff, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and journey.
Well, I appreciate it. Absolutely.
That's a wrap. Hope you found a nugget or two in there that can help you on your franchise journey. And if you ever want to talk franchising, reach out to me anytime.